Shalom, brothers and sisters. How y'all doing? Happy Sabbath to you and yours. It is about 5:15 over here in Arizona, approaching the end of Shabbat. We are going to talk about the upcoming feasts, Passover, Pesach, Unleavened Bread, and the Feast of First Fruits. The biblical New Year was, it started Saturday at the end of Shabbat last week. Was looking for the new moon that Friday at the beginning of Shabbat, couldn't find it, verified with a couple other resources, it was not seen. But then Saturday, at the end of sundown, you could clearly see it, which started day one of the new year. So happy New Year's to you guys. So I want to start off by saying you're going to find people that have a different understanding of the calendar. Some people that go off of, like I do, the sliver, the new moon sighting by seeing the sliver of light on the moon. Some go with conjunction, which means you don't see a moon at all, and sometimes that lasts multiple days. And just to be honest, so I'm not a fan of the conjunction, but if that's how you understand it, I'm not gonna tell you you're wrong. I'm not going to condemn you. I think this is one of those topics where God does know our heart, and we're trying to keep these feasts, not a situation where a lot of people, it's cliche, say, well, God knows my heart. I celebrate Christmas. God knows my heart. Well, your heart will deceive you. That's one of those situations where, in the word, it clearly talks against certain things. And if you have an understanding of, well, God knows my heart and it's okay if I do this, be careful. But when it comes to things like the calendar, the name of God, I think that's one of those things where these things are of the utmost importance, but as we're growing in grace and as we're trying to figure things out, it's not like we, are, if we understand the new moon one way or the other, that we're condemned if we're wrong. And then even if someone goes off the sliver of the moon, is that the sliver of the moon from Jerusalem? Or is that the sliver of the moon from where you are? Christ did say that times are coming where people will worship the Father in spirit and truth, neither from Jerusalem nor from the mountain which the Samaritans worshiped from. And honestly, if you feel like it's the new moon from Jerusalem, like, that makes sense. If you feel like it's the new moon from where you live, well, that also makes sense. And depending on if you understand it one way or the other, that could put you a day off, a day before, a day behind. So, I just want to start off by saying, look, you do the best you can, find a ministry or a calendar that makes sense to you. And next year you may change your mind. Even with that being said, when it comes to Pesach, when it comes to Passover, do you have the meal at the beginning of the 14th or at the end of the 14th? That is something that many people disagree upon as well. This is our third Passover that we will be keeping. The previous 2 years, we have kept the meal right at the beginning of Passover. I've been studying it today. Lex from Unlearn the Lies has a teaching that he just put out on the same topic. And even himself, he lets you know he's been studying this out for 10 years, extensive hours, and he's gone back and forth, about the beginning of the 14th or the end of the 14th. So as far as the upcoming dates, the 14th of Nisan, or Aviv, I believe in the King James it says Abib, Exodus 13:9, I believe, 13:4, Exodus 13:4. But the first biblical month, um, started on April 2nd, Saturday, April 2nd. So the 14th day of this month will be on Friday, April 15th. We'll start the 14th of the 14th day of the month of the biblical month. The following day will start the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So at the end of Shabbat, Sabbath, next week, we'll start the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that will go on until the evening of April 23rd. The end of the following Shabbat will be the end of the week of Unleavened Bread. Then the following day, so that night at evening, we'll start the Feast of First Fruits, which would be Resurrection Day. Christ is the first fruits of many. So, and that is the way that I am understanding the calendar from the day that I spotted the new moon in the sky, starting day one. I have a couple calendars and resources that I verified that we're all on the same page. For example, Parable of the Vineyard, their dates are exactly the same as the way I am keeping the dates, the way I understand the dates. Triumph and Truth, which is another channel that I like, they're actually a day off. They're a day ahead, behind. And I think that is because he's going off of the new moon spotted from Jerusalem, which would put you, a day behind. And I've done that as well. Like, okay, well, when's the new moon spotted in Jerusalem? But to be technical, I can't verify that. I have to rely on what someone else is telling me to know that it's been spotted. So at this point, I like to pay attention, watch the moon, watch the sunset, and verify that for myself. So by going off of that and that reasoning, that is where the Passover, the 14th, will start at sundown on the 15th. So it'll line up with next week's Shabbat. Then at the end of the Sabbath, that will start the 15th day, which is the week of Unleavened Bread. 7 days would put us at the end of April the 23rd, which is the end of the following Shabbat. Hope I'm not losing you guys. And then at that point starts first fruits. So let's read here in Leviticus where it talks about these days. It says, Leviticus 23:4, these are the feast of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yah. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. But ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yah 7 days. And the 7th day is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. Okay, so the first day of the week of unleavened bread and the 7th day of the week of unleavened bread is what people refer to as a high Sabbath. Okay, so it's a lot like a weekly Sabbath where you're not supposed to work or cause others to work, but these Sabbaths only come around once a year. There is only The week of unleavened bread happens once a year. The first day of that feast happens once a year. The seventh day of that feast happens once a year. Passover, for example, the 14th day, is not a high Sabbath where you cannot work. This year, it falls on a weekly Sabbath. So you will technically have back-to-back Sabbaths next week. You will have the weekly Sabbath, which is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, which is Passover, but it is a Sabbath because it's a weekly Sabbath, not because it's Passover day. The following day starts the week of unleavened bread, the first day of that feast, which is a high Sabbath. The last day of the week of unleavened bread will actually fall on the following Sabbath and line up with that. So it'll kind of be a double Sabbath in the sense of it's a weekly Sabbath and a yearly Sabbath on the same day. Then you have the Feast of First Fruits, which is always going to be on a Sunday. And the way that is talked about is it's the morrow, the tomorrow following the weekly Sabbath within the week of unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the weekly Sabbath within that week will be the very last day of the week of unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which would be that Shabbat, which I believe would be the 22nd going into the 23rd. That would be the last day of the week of unleavened bread, would be a high Sabbath, and then that night, which should be Saturday, April 23rd, going into Sunday, April 24th, is the Feast of First Fruits, the wave sheaf offering, Resurrection Day. So those are the dates of the upcoming feast. As far as Passover and keeping it either the beginning of the 14th or the end of the 14th, I've been studying this, and like I said, I don't want to condemn anyone. If you have an understanding and it makes sense to you to do it at the beginning of the 14th, then do it that way. If you have an understanding that it's at the end of the 14th going into the 15th, then do it that way. I would rather you do that and be convinced of it. Maybe at some point you will change your mind and see it a little different, than to do it the way someone else is doing it just because that's the way they're doing it, even though you don't fully agree. Okay. So in studying this, the last 2 years we've done it at the beginning of Passover, the beginning of the 14th, because it says the evening of the 14th. And, going back to Genesis, it says there was evening, there was morning the first day. So when I think of the evening of the 14th, I think of the beginning of the 14th, not the end. But I was going back through Exodus 12, which is the first Passover, and how it went that during that time, and just trying to get a better understanding, trying to either verify that the way I understand it is correct, or if that is not correct, trying to find where, why, how that is the case. Okay, in Exodus 12, starting with verse 2, it says, "This month shall be the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." Okay. "Speak unto the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month ye shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male in the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. Ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Okay, kill it in the evening. And this is them putting the blood on the doorpost and whatnot. So literally, God would pass over their house. It was the first Passover, and they, no one would die within that home. It was one of the plagues on Egypt. Let's see. It does tell you not to keep any of it until the morning. So we will cook lamb. We don't cook a whole lamb. We just, we cook some meat, and we try to consume it all that night and try to honor the day the best we can. If you don't eat meat, that's fine. You can honor the day regardless. It does tell you to, even in the New Testament, it tells you to drink the wine in remembrance of him, representing his blood that was shed for you for the new covenant. Eat the bread, the unleavened bread, which is a symbolic of his flesh that was sacrificed for you. And then if anything else, it tells you to have the meal with some bitter herbs, which could be a few different, types of herbs. I'm not going to tell you it has to be this or has to be that. But anyhow, those are some of the symbolic things we can do during the Passover meal that we are instructed to do in remembrance of Messiah. Okay, so, but into further examining, is it the beginning or the ending? It goes on. Verse 15 in Exodus 12 says, 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven from your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Verse 17 says, and you shall observe the feast. This is key right here for me, for my understanding. Okay. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. So this is saying that during the feast of unleavened bread, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so the way it happened was the lamb was slaughtered at evening. They put the blood on the doorpost. They consumed the lamb that night. That night, the destroyer came, and the households of the Egyptians were hit. Okay, that night, Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron, and that day, that morning, they were leaving Egypt. So this says that self-same day have I delivered your armies out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so it makes sense to me that from that aspect that the Passover would be technically at the end of the day. Because, the way that everything transpired, the lamb was slaughtered, the blood was put on the doorpost, they consumed the lamb that night. That morning, they were leaving town, leaving Egypt, and according to the word, that was the week of unleavened bread, the feast of unleavened bread. Verse 18 says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 20th, the 1 and 20th day of the month at even. So that's a 7-day time period. But does that start at the beginning of the 14th and the beginning of the 21st, or at the end of the 14th and at the end of the 21st? Well, the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the 15th. which would technically be the end of the 14th. You know, if I was talking to my son about this, every day starts with evening, but to be honest, in about an hour and a half from now, when the Shabbat is ending, it'll be becoming evening as well. Once again, if you are convinced and you understand it to be the beginning of the day, I'm not going to argue with you. The last 2 years, the only 2 Passovers I've kept, that's exactly how I did it. And maybe with further studying, that's where I'll end up. But just reevaluating these things, I feel convinced that, you know, it's the end of the day on the 14th. One more thing to kind of that I looked at is the Day of Atonement in Leviticus 23. It says, Leviticus 23 and verse 27, also on the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Yah. And you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yah your Elohim. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that doeth any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and you shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month at even. From even unto even shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. Okay, so that tells us it's obviously the 10th day, but that says on the 9th day at even, meaning the end of the day, from even to even. Just like Shabbat is at the evening of Friday to the evening of Saturday. And the way this talks about the even of the 9th day, it's talking about it as the end of the day. Once again, I don't want to, it's not something worth arguing to me. We can try to edify each other. This is what makes sense to me. Maybe you have a position, some scripture that I have not looked at today, and it would lead you to believe otherwise. You're trying to keep the feast, and if you're trying to keep these feasts, more than likely you're not keeping worldly holidays. You're trying to walk that narrow path, and Yah be praised for that. But once again, the way I'm understanding these feasts, Passover starts the evening of the 15th to the evening of the 16th, the evening of the 16th of this month, until the evening of the 23rd would be your 7-day period for the week of unleavened bread. And then the following day would be the Feast of First Fruits, which would start the evening of the 23rd until the evening of the 24th, which is the day that Christ resurrected and came out of the grave. So I hope this teaching blesses somebody. Love you guys. Until next time.